good price that makes your customers happy. How can you tell if your business model is broken? Is you are losing money. It's a life-changing idea. It's called zero-based thinking.
I always wanted to know what was the difference between the best people in their field and all the others. I've decided to ask the experts how they do it. So I take my Bentley and go to meet the real mastery. My name is Matt Sierra and this is Experts in the Bentley. Brian Tracy, one of the most popular personal development trainers in the world. He has been a consultant for over 1,000 companies and has spoken to over 5 million people. He's the author of dozens best-selling books translated into multiple languages. Let's go! And we've got Brian Tracy here, the person who's pretty well known here in Poland, so great to have you here. It's an honor for us to have the opportunity to speak to you, especially that you're the guy who is very well known here in Poland. A lot of people read your books. A lot of people attended your seminars, so you're very welcome and happy to have you here.
Thank you. I am happy as well. I started coming to Poland maybe 15 years ago. And I very much like the Polish people because they are very intelligent and very entrepreneurial. And so it's a pleasure, it's an honor for me to be back with you.
Great. When I started with business about 20 years ago, I started also with your books. So it was pretty helpful, and the biggest compliment I could get from someone here in Poland was that when I gave someone a piece of advice, the person told me, well, thanks, Matt, that was a great piece of advice. You're kind of Polish Brian Tracy. And for me, that was awesome to hear that. But fortunately, we've got original one here. So I would like to ask you a couple of questions, and the first question is very easy, very down to earth. The answer will definitely be very short. How to get rich?
Yes, and that is a very good question. And I have taught this to more than 5 million people in 84 countries. Many years ago, I received a phone call from a big businessman, and he had 800 companies with managers around the country. And he asked me, could I give a speech on how to become a self-made millionaire? And I said, of course. When you're beginning as a speaker, you always say, of course. And so I hung up the phone, and then I realized I was not a millionaire. I was 36 years old, and I had no money, and I knew nothing about millionaires. So I began to study. I had 2 months. So for 2 months, I read everything I could find on self-made millionaires. And then I got up and I gave a speech. And the speech was the 21 success secrets of self-made millionaires. And I gave the speech and I got a standing ovation. And I was invited to give the speech again and again and again and again all over the world with hundreds and thousands and millions of people. And these people, I recorded it on, first of all, cassette and then CD, and now it's on Audible. And some people listened to this audio program every day for a year and went from nothing to millionaire status in 1 year because the ideas are so good. And then I began to write books on the subject and do seminars on the subject. So that being said, the way to become rich is very simple, is you have to offer a product or service. You have to do it in business. 90% of wealthy people started as entrepreneurs. They started off with an idea to sell something to someone and make a profit, and then do it again, and then do it again and again, and become better and better at doing it so you can offer a good product or service at a good price that makes your customers happy. So what business are we in? We say we're in the business of making customers happy. One of the things that I've done is I've studied the richest people in the world, and three are very interesting to me: Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, who is not with us anymore, and of course, Jeff Bezos of Amazon. All of these people started with nothing but an idea. And I like Jeff Bezos because Jeff Bezos' idea was, how can I make customers happy? And in the Jeff Bezos organization, they talk about customers all the time. They discuss their customers, they interview customers. And in every meeting in Amazon, there's a table and there's one chair that is empty. And this chair represents the customer. So whenever they are talking about anything that they're going to do, they imagine that there's a customer sitting there listening to them and agreeing or not agreeing. So Jeff Bezos went from nothing. He drove across the country from New York to Seattle, and he sat in the car while his wife was driving, and he sat with his laptop computer, and he came up with a business plan. And the business plan was to satisfy a need. And the need was people like to read, but they're too busy to go to the bookstores. So he said, okay, we will make the books available to you. We will give you a discount of 30%, unconditional guarantee, and you'll have to wait 5 to 7 days to get the book. So people said, that's a good deal, because I'm not going to buy a book and read it the same day. So if I want a book, I'll just order it online. I get a discount. It comes straight to my house. I don't have to go to the bookstores. And that was the beginning of one of the biggest fortunes in the history of the world. And from that day on, he kept looking for ways, the round table with the customer sitting there, how can we make this customer happier? And the answer was speed. Is if we could reduce from 7 days to 6 days, from 6 days to 5 days, 4 days. Today, I buy books 2 or 3 times a week. And if I buy a book today, it will be delivered to my front door tomorrow. And it can be any book at all. I just got a book this morning, in fact, on economics. And it's a wonderful book. It's a book that we would be interested in. And it's delivered overnight. It's wonderful. When I first started buying from Amazon, it was 7 days. Now it's overnight. There's a joke with regard to Amazon. They say that if you order a book or a product from Amazon, you have to then run as fast as you can to the front door, because the product will be there waiting for you at the front door. And so people who want to be successful have to always be thinking, how can I make my customers happier than other competitors? What can I do? And you must think about that every day. And one of the subjects I want to talk about with you and with our friends, to me, after 40 years of speaking to more than 1,000 giant corporations and more than 10,000 smaller corporations and 5 million people, I've come up with what I find is the most important thing of all, and it has to do with what is called the business model. Are you familiar? You heard about these words, the business model?
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Well, the business model is also called the profit model. The business model is all the things that you do to earn a profit. Now, Harvard University does continuing studies on the business model. They find that 80% of companies have a broken business model. It may be a little broken. It may be a lot broken. The company may actually be going bankrupt. And some companies that are successful 1 year can go bankrupt within the next year if the business model is wrong, if the business model breaks. It would be like driving your car down the street and your main axle breaks and you go off the road. In other words, you cannot drive the car anymore. So the business model is your profit model. And so what I do, and again, this is an analysis But just ask yourself, what is your business model? And what they find is that 80% of business owners, entrepreneurs, our friends, don't know what their business model is. They know that they have a business model, but they're not really clear about what it is. So the business model is made up of several things, which we can talk about in a minute. But how can you tell if you have a good business model? Well, the answer is that you have steady, growing sales and profits. That's the only test, is the profit test. How can you tell if you have problems? Well, you have profits and losses and profits and losses and profits and losses, and you worry about your business all the time. How can you tell if your business model is broken? Is you are losing money and you're thinking all the time, where am I going to get enough money to continue in business? So the starting point is to ask, what is my business model, and is my business model successful? 80% of companies, large and small, have a business model that is not working for them. And the key to becoming rich for you and I and our friends, the key to becoming rich is to work on the business model. It's very much like when I was a young man, I was single, and I used to go out with girls, and I would take girls out to restaurants where they served Caesar salad. You know what Caesar salad is?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, with garlic. And so I would go out to good restaurants where they had Caesar salad. And one day I had an idea that this waiter who was making the Caesar salad was not very smart. He was not a genius, but he made a beautiful Caesar salad. So I asked him, next to the table, I asked him, how is it you make such a beautiful Caesar salad? He said, well, they just give me the recipe in the kitchen and they give me the ingredients and I just put them in the bowl and you have a delicious Caesar salad. So I said, I can do that. I can make my own Caesar salad at home, and then I could take girls back to my apartment and offer them Caesar salad. And it was quite successful. And so I went out and I bought every book I could find, cookbooks on Caesar salad. I went to the stores. I experimented. The first Caesar salad I made on my own was terrible. The second was not so bad. And then I kept changing it and changing it and changing it. And now I make a Caesar salad that is probably one of the best in the world. In fact, anybody listening to us, any of our friends listening, go to my website, briantracy.com, and go to the Caesar salad recipe. This is free, and just download it. And people do this all over the world, and they say it's the best Caesar salad they ever tasted in their life. It's the same as a business model. A business model is like a recipe, and you have to experiment. You have to put in more ingredients here, more investment there, and so on, until you get it so that it's working well. And when it's working well, it just pours profit into your life. And so that's your job, is to find out the right recipe for you as a business owner. And what is the right recipe? Be open to the possibility that you could have the wrong business model. Human beings, the reason they don't become rich is because they get locked into the comfort zone. They could become comfortable doing what they're doing. Even if it's not successful, they could become very resistant to change. So instead of being open to change, always ask the question, could I be wrong? Could I be wrong in what I am doing today? Could this be the wrong strategy? And how can you tell? Profits. It's always happy customers who buy your product and buy your product and buy your product. Peter Drucker, the great business guru, had a very interesting observation. He said there are three keys to business success. First is to make a sale for the first time. That's the hardest thing of all. And it is amazing. When I learned this, I began to spend 80% of my time talking to customers. 80%. Don't spend time in the office. Don't spend time drinking coffee. Don't spend time talking to people. Spend 80% of your time talking to customers. and study sales and study strategy, study marketing, but focus on customers all day long. And it's just amazing to me. The average business owner speaks to 2 new potential customers per day. That's the average. Half are above, half are below. Some people speak to only 2 new customers per week. And then they wonder, why is it that I'm not earning very much money? Well, the answer is there's a direct relationship between how many customers you talk to and how much they buy, and how much they buy and how much you earn, and so on. So therefore, spend all of your time talking to customers and asking them questions. I am probably the top sales trainer in the world today. I have made more millionaires in sales in every country all over the world. They come to me and they say, you made me rich. You made me rich. You made me rich. Because I taught them how to focus all of their time and attention on customers. So they're focused on customers. So number 1 is to make a sale for the first time. That's the hardest sale of all. And every company that goes broke because their business model is not good enough for them to make the first sale. Step number 2 is to make the second sale. And the second sale comes because your customer is so happy with your product or service that they buy it again and again. Imagine, for example, a restaurant. A restaurant cannot survive unless people come and come again and come again because they're so happy. I remember one of my favorite restaurants, and my wife and I would go there every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, we would go to the same restaurant, and the restaurant was full all the time with people like me because the food and the service was so excellent. So your job is, number 1, make the first sale. Number 2 is make the second sale because the customer was so happy with the first sale. And then number 3 is have your customers bring new customers. So it's sell again, and get new customers from referrals and testimonials. Now, all the best businesses in the world think like this all the time. They think one customer who is really happy will tell, I think it's 13 other customers to buy the product. One customer who's unhappy will tell 22 people not to buy the product. So everything comes from making the first sale and then taking care of that customer like they're your child, like they're a member of your family. And give you an example, one of the richest men in the world before he died was Steve Jobs of Apple Corporation. Now that's a really interesting story because when Steve Jobs was actually thrown out of the company, he went and he started Pixar and built a $6 billion company because he's very creative. And then Apple started to go down and down and down. So finally they came back to him because he owned a lot of stock in the company. And they said, here, you take the company back because we can't help it. It's got 2 months away from bankruptcy, 2 months away from no cash. And so he came in and he looked around and he spoke to people and he discovered that they hadn't told him. He only had 2 months left of money and they were producing 104 products. And of the 104 products, only 4 were making a profit. All the other were simply just high cost. So he came in and he got all the executives together and he said, I want you to make a list of 10 products that we should stop offering, stop manufacturing. And they said, no, because their jobs were locked into it. He said, no, we can't do that. Yes, you can. We want you to recommend 10 products to cancel. So they came back, meeting after meeting after meeting, 10, 20, 30. They finally got down to 4 products. And then the company started to turn around. But now they had no cash. So even though they had lowered the expenses, they had no cash. So who is Steve Jobs' biggest competitor in the world of computers? Was Bill Gates, richest man in the world. And he had been attacking Bill Gates for years. Bill Gates is this, and Bill Gates is not modern, and Bill Gates has an old company. And so they were always competing with each other. Sometimes they would go on stages and they would debate. And Steve Jobs would always be telling Bill Gates that his company was old-fashioned and so on. So now he's broke. He's about to go bankrupt. So he calls Bill Gates and he said, Bill, he said, I know that I have said a lot of negative things about you in the past. He said, but I'm out of money. And if I don't get some money very soon, I'm going to go bankrupt. He said, I need a loan. And I get tears because Bill Gates, great man, Bill Gates said, Steve, he said, Apple is too important to go bankrupt. It's too important. He said, so I'm not going to lend you any money. He said, I'm going to buy stock in Apple, which was very, very low. The stock was very low because everybody knew the company was going bankrupt. He said, I'm going to buy stock. He said, and I'm going to make sure that you have enough money to succeed. And that was the turning point for Apple. And then they came up with the idea of the iPhone. And the iPhone, of course, changed the whole world. One interesting point, where did the iPhone come from? Steve Jobs was manufacturing Apple computers. Where did the iPhone come from? Well, the biggest producer of portable telephones in the world, there are two, was BlackBerry and Nokia. BlackBerry and Nokia. They each had 49% of the world market. So they looked at all of the what do they call it, the patents, and they found that Nokia had come up with an idea, great concept for an Apple, for an iPhone type, and they had registered the patents so that everybody in the world knew about it. They registered the patents, but they decided they did not want to manufacture that kind of a phone because it would hurt their sales of their existing phones. So Apple went to them and said, this patent, would you sell that to us? And they said, sure, we have no use for it. We have no intention of producing a phone like the iPhone, so we'll sell it to you. So they sold it to them on a royalty basis. In other words, they didn't pay any cash. They just simply paid a royalty for every phone they manufactured. So with that design, Apple built the iPhone. Within 5 years, Nokia was broke. 5 years, BlackBerry was broke. Within 10 years, iPhone was the most successful phone in the world. Now, here's an interesting thing, is they did a survey. They had about 1 billion iPhones in the world, and they asked all of their clients, will you buy a new iPhone in the future? I mean, are you happy? Would you buy again? 90% said, yes, we'll buy the new phone. That told them that the phone was a huge, huge market success. That's when Warren Buffett came in for the first time, came in and bought an enormous amount of Apple. And he said recently, about 2 weeks ago, he said it was one of the greatest investments he ever made in his life. It's one of the reasons why he's one of the richest men in the world is because he bought Apple when Apple decided to go into the iPhone. Everything is focused on customers and making customers happy. And so every time, I don't know about you, but I've got an iPhone. Everybody in our family.
Me too.
My son, who was here just a minute ago, my son came to us when he was about 16 or 17 years old. And he said, Dad, he said, you should buy stock in Apple because this phone is going to change the whole world. And I said, oh, yes, sure. What does a 16-year-old boy know about investing in the stock market? So I didn't invest in Apple. And I have a good friend, more than one, but one good friend. He put all the money from his life into Apple when they came out with the iPhone. And within 5 years, he was rich and he never had to work again. Never had to work again. It's just a wonderful story. But everything is the customer. So you keep asking, How do I know if I have a good business model? Because it works. It's working and it's generating sales and profits all the time. Now, here is one of the great ideas that I discovered. It's not my idea. Is that your business today is designed to give you exactly the results that you are getting today. If you're not happy with the results that you're getting today, you have to design it again and change it so that it gets you more and better results. And that's very hard for entrepreneurs to accept, that I am doing the wrong thing. Is no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to get my profits up. Yes, because the way you've structured your business is giving you exactly the results that you're getting today. So what you have to do is you have to change your business model. You have to look at your business model. And so we always ask 4 questions. And I teach coaching programs for entrepreneurs, but there's 4 great questions that all of our friends should ask all the time. Write them down, discuss them. Question number 1 is, what am I doing right? What is really working for me today? What's the most successful areas of my business? Number 2, what are we doing wrong? What is not working? Who is not working? One of the most important things you ask is there anybody who's working for me who I would not hire again today, knowing what I now know? So always ask, what should I be doing more of? What should I be doing less of? And then number 3 is, what should I start doing that I'm not doing today? And number 4 is, what should I stop doing completely? More, less, stop, or start. More, less, stop, or start. Now, here is an idea for our friends, because it's one of the best I've ever taught. When I've taught it for 40 years, it's a life-changing idea. It's called zero-based thinking. Zero-based. That means where you bring everything down to 0, and you ask this magic question: is there anything that I am doing today that, knowing what I now know, I would not start doing again today? Is there anything I'm doing today that, knowing what I now know, I would not start doing? What Steve Jobs did is he looked at 104 products and found that 100 of them they would not even bring to the market, because they were money losers. They were just basically sucking, like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking the company dry. Mm-hmm. So he forced them all to cancel and agree, meeting after meeting after meeting, to get right down to 4 products, all of which were profitable. Number 2, he had to have cash to keep the company going, which he got from Bill Gates. And number 3, he had to have a new product. And the new product was the iPhone. And it's interesting, the engineers kept bringing him, they had the technology, they bought it from Nokia, they had the technology, and they kept bringing him versions of the iPhone, and all the versions were square. And they would bring it to him, and he would say, I don't like this. And they'd say, well, what's wrong with it? And he said, I don't like it. He said, but it's very good technology. It works really well. And here's what he said. It's very important. He said, but I don't love it yet. I don't love it. He said, if I don't love it, then my customers won't love it. So they kept bringing him versions. And finally, they brought the version. If I've got my phone here. They brought the version, and the version had rounded corners. It was rounded corners. I'm sure you have an iPhone. The rounded corners, and he looked at this and he said, I love this. I love this. My customers will love this. And they did. They sold 1 billion iPhones in the next few years. And so it's the same thing. Ask yourself, is there anything that you're doing in your business that, knowing what you now know, based on your experience, you would not start doing again? The next thing, is there any person who is working in your business that, knowing what you now know, you would not hire again? You would not bring them into your business again? Is there any investment that you have made that, knowing what you now know, you would not make that investment? This is one of the most important thinking skills in the world, because there's always an answer. Now, how can you tell if you are in a zero-based thinking situation? The answer is simple. It's called stress. The major source of your stress in life is always something that if you had to do it over, you would not do it again. So just ask yourself, what are the things in my life? And we have a joke. We say the problems in your life come with hair on top. As 95% of your problems are people. And so you ask yourself, when I think of stress, when I think of the wrong people, whose picture comes into my mind? And you know immediately. So you ask this question, knowing what I know, would I hire that person again today if they came to me and applied for a job? And if the answer is no, then the next step is, how do you fire them and how fast? And you don't fire them next week or next month or the end of the year. You fire them today. If once you reach the conclusion that you would not hire them, get rid of them as fast as you can. And so those are the keys to success. What should I do more of, less of, start or stop? What am I doing today that knowing what I now know, I would not do at all? And then you start to rebuild your business model. And your business model has 7 parts. Actually, I have 2 seminars. One is a 1-day seminar on the 7 parts of the business model. And the other is a 2-day seminar with 10 parts, with workbooks and exercises. And I give it to hundreds of people. And it's wonderful stuff. And it just starts off with a series of questions about the different parts of your business. If any one of these is wrong, it's like having a part of your mechanical car broken. The whole car stops working or starts working very, very slowly. Oh, so I'm sorry if I'm dominating, but I really want to help our friends. And maybe you have some questions that you would like to ask me.
Yeah, that's perfect, because there's a lot of knowledge here. So thanks a lot. Okay, so I like to move to self-discipline, because on various occasions you've defined self-discipline as the willingness to do what needs to be done at the appropriate time, whether we feel like doing it or not. And you've been in the self-development industry for decades, and I'm interested in if you also saw this change in society, that new generations, possibly, they stick too much to their emotions, like they consider their emotions too important. Like, I don't feel like doing it. I feel bad because I have to do something stressful. It's hard. It's tough. And I see there are a lot of people like this. What would you advise them if you think that's the case?
Your idea is very important. It's the most important quality for success in business is self-discipline. So your emphasis on self-discipline is absolutely correct. Without self-discipline, nothing is possible. With self-discipline, everything is possible. Now, I have studied this subject for at least 40 years. I've spent thousands of hours studying the psychology of success. And what I've found is this: they say that persistence is to the character of man or woman as carbon is to steel. Is that when you heat a piece of steel with carbon, the steel becomes stronger and more powerful. So self-discipline is like the carbon in the steel of your personality. And here's what we have found: is that all success comes from resistance. And resistance is a big subject. But what it means is you resist the natural tendency to do the easy way. And you force yourself to do the correct way. For example, Alexander Solzhenitsyn once said that most people fail because they will take a project, a book, a farm, a business, 95%, but then they will find an excuse not to do the last 5%. And the previous 95% is lost. Everything you put into the first 95% is lost if you don't do the next 5%. So what they have found in metaphysics is that whenever you force yourself to complete a task, self-discipline, you create heat. And the heat is very much like the heat that you apply to steel in a steel forge. And that heat causes the steel to change its composition and become stronger and more powerful than it was before. So if you decide, well, I'm going to do the dishes and put all the dishes away, but then at the end of the evening, there's still some dishes or pots and pans sitting there. So you say, well, I'll put those away tomorrow. All of the power that you generated in disciplining yourself to clean up and put everything away is lost. So what you do is always force yourself to completion. It's called task completion. All success comes from task completion. It does not come from task working on. It comes from task completion. And so therefore, once you decide on the task, if you have to stay up all night long, just push and push and push. And what happens is you actually change your character. You become stronger and better and smarter and more determined. And then the next time you need discipline, it's easier. And then the next time it's easier. And soon you get to the point where you know that you can do anything you need to do to be successful. You will get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You will work until midnight. If necessary, you will work on weekends. You will work until the job is done. You will never stop until you're successful. Once you know that, nothing can stop you. You may lose everything, but you'll get it all back again. You see, we see stories in Europe as well as the US where people who are billionaires, they're billionaires in high tech, and then the market changes and they lose all their money. And they're sleeping on the couch in their friend's apartment. They have no money. They were a billionaire 2 years ago. Now they have no money. And so I remember this great story of a very wealthy man who was literally sleeping on a park bench in the local park. He lost all his money. And a friend of his came by and he's sitting there on the park bench, and a friend came by and says, "How are you doing?" He said, "Well," he said, "it's been a very difficult year." He said, "Well, what's it like to be broke?" He said, "You don't have to understand." He said, "I'm not broke. I am just temporarily out of money." He said, broke is a mental condition. Being out of money is always temporary. And within another year, he was back and he was a top performer and earning great money and so on. Because as far as he was concerned, being broke was just a temporary condition. And it was not a permanent condition because he never saw himself as being broke. And so it's the same thing with our entrepreneurs, is you're going to have to try a lot of things. Again, according to Peter Drucker, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but he said it takes an average of 4 times to try a new business idea before you finally realize how to make it work successfully. It's an average of 4 times. Well, no, I don't know if it's 4 or 10 or anything else, but I like that. I like the idea. So when you try something and it doesn't work, you don't go, "Oh, I lost my money." You just say, that's just time number 1. So now pull back, ask myself, what should I do? More of, less of, start or stop. More of, less of, start, and try it again. If it doesn't work, I say, that's true, but I've got 4. and 4 is an average. That means sometimes you'll try 10 times before you succeed. Sometimes you'll succeed the first time. But just always have that idea. And the main thing is, I never give up. Never give up. I teach my audiences 2 things to say. And entrepreneurs have to say this all the time. Number 1 is, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. Whatever it is, I can do it. I will be successful. If I lose everything, I'll pick myself up. I'll try again, but I can do it. There's a rule, as you know, as well as me, you become what you think about. So if you think certain words, they become part of your reality, the way you look at the world. So no matter what you say, I can do it. I can do it. And the second thing you say is, I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. And I did this with my kids. My children are now, I've got four. My youngest is 31. My oldest is 42. They all have children of their own. And I've told them all their lives, my wife and I, is you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You can do anything you put your mind to if you persist. And number two is that you never give up. You never give up. You never give up. And so they say, well, I know one thing about myself. I never give up. Yes, that's the most wonderful thing you can give your children, is the idea that I never give up. I may fail temporarily, but I never give up. And if you say, I can do it, which will start you working, and I never give up, which will keep you moving, then your success is guaranteed. Your success is guaranteed because your words become your reality. So these are some of the things that I've taught to an enormous number of people, and they tell me in letters and emails. And I had a man come up to me at a big conference in Washington 2 weeks ago, and I'd never seen him before. And he came up to me and he said, "You changed my life. You made me rich. You changed my life. You made me rich." And I have heard those words from my books and tapes, courses, seminars, and so on, at least 1,000 times. I get emails. I got an email yesterday in Spanish. I read Spanish, French, and German. In Spanish saying, "You changed my life. You made me rich." In Spanish, "You changed my life. You made me rich." And what was it? Is you said, just keep saying to yourself, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I never give up. I never give up. And those are the great words. And you just say these over and over again until they become locked in. It's sort of like a program, and you put in keep, and away you go. By the way, my friends have asked me to say, if you want more information, come to briantracy.com. We have now started an artificial intelligence business, which I'm sure that you're working on. And within a few weeks, we're going to have a program called Ask Brian Tracy. And you will be able to go to Ask Brian Tracy, and we will answer any business question or personal development question based on my 50 years of writing that you could possibly have for any part of your business or personal life. And so we can make that available, and there's no charge. It's no charge. But you can take all of our stuff and lay it out so that if you have any question, you say, how do I get an appointment in this type of market? One program we just did, which will be available, is how do you sell higher priced products against lower price competition? This is a big effing question. Excuse me. Big question. How do you sell higher priced products? Because at least 50% of our friends in your organization are selling products that are cost more than the average person. And the answer is there's a solution for it. There's a series of solutions. I've worked on this for 30 years. And there's beautiful ways to present your product or service. And you can tell them, this is the most expensive product like this in the market today, and this is why you should buy it. Now, I told you about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Who's the richest person in the world today? Who's the richest person in the world today?
Probably whether Bill Gates or Elon Musk or some of their friends.
No, it's Bernard Arnault of France. Yes, he and his family are the richest people in the world. What do they sell? They sell the highest priced products in the world, and people buy them by the truckload. If you want to buy one of their products, you know what you have to do? You have to call them and make an appointment. And sometimes you have to fill out an application form. And then when you go to the store, they have guards, and you have to present your appointment, just like a very exclusive doctor. And then you go in, and someone meets you and greets you and takes you and shows you the products and services that Bernard Arnault and LMVH, I think is the name of the company, and you pay thousands of dollars for things that you could buy around the corner for almost nothing. Why? It's because people love high quality products. And they have found, if you become the richest person in the world selling really high priced products against low price competition, that means that the price is not the reason why people buy. Price, price is almost never the reason why people buy. But because people are lazy, the very first thing they say is it costs too much. It costs too much. It costs too much. That's not the reason that they buy or not buy. Nobody cares how much it costs. If you need something that's really important to you or to your family, you don't care about the cost. All you care about is the availability. How soon can I get it? And how will you take care of me afterwards? So this is something people who buy from LVMH, people who buy there go and buy over and over again. The richest people in the world fly to Paris to be able to go there and go in with suitcases full of money to buy jewelry and perfumes and clothes and everything else. It's not money. And you know something? Most entrepreneurs, 80%, 80-20, think, well, my problem is my product is too expensive. No, that is you are no good at selling your product. You are no good at explaining why it is in the best interest of the customer to buy your product and pay more for it. And once you understand that, that's a program that we teach. It's a beautiful one-day program, selling higher priced products. And when people come to ask Brian Tracy, they'll be able to put that in. How do I sell higher priced products against lower price competition? And you're going to get the answers back. Our world is changing in such a positive way that you and I can have access to the best information in the history of the world in minutes, even seconds, if you're good on a computer. It's wonderful.
Brian, you've mentioned something about 7 steps in sales. I guess sales is a very important and interesting topic to most of our audience. So could you expand on that?
Well, the answer is in selling, we say there's 7 parts of selling. I could spend a whole day on it. But number 1 is to prospect or to find new people. And what is a good prospect? It's a person who wants and needs and can afford your product or service. That's step number 1. And how do you find out if this is that kind of person, a person that is worthwhile for you to invest your time in? The answer is you ask them good questions. You ask them warm, friendly questions about their current situation and the problems or challenges they're facing and what their plans are for the future. And that will tell you whether or not this is a good person to talk to. If you're talking to a person and they're very nice and they're very pleasant, and sometimes I say this, many customers are lonely. They're lonely. So therefore, if you come by to speak to them, they're lonely. So they want to talk to you and they want to be charming and they want to tell you stories and everything else. But no, your job is not to go out there and have an enjoyable time. Your job is to talk to people who can buy your product or service within a reasonable time. And the way you do that is you ask questions. So that's number 1. Number 2 is building rapport, building friendship, so that the person likes you and trusts you. Now, here's one of the greatest rules in selling that I ever learned, and it changed my career. It is that listening builds trust. Listening builds trust. So therefore, how do you get a chance to listen? You ask good questions and lean forward and nod and write down and write down. Writing down what your customer says is very complimentary and it builds trust. And there's a certain point where the trust is built up to the point almost like snow, an avalanche in the Alps, and it starts to cascade. And so step number 3 in selling is you ask, presenting your product or service. You show them what your product or service does and how it, the 3rd step is qualifying. You ask them a whole series of questions about what they are doing now and their plans for the future. And people love to talk about themselves and their future. Step number 4 is you make a presentation and you show them how your product or service can satisfy the needs and desires and problems that they have. Step number 5 is you answer questions. Do you have any questions? What about this? What about that? Step number 6 is you close the sale. You ask them to take action. And I used to, when I was out selling, I would do most of it properly, but I was too nervous to ask them to buy. And so I would say something like this. Everybody knows. I say, well, what would you like to do now? What would you like to do now? And they would answer the same thing. Well, I'd like to think it over. I'd like to think about it. I'd like to go home and I'll call you back in a day or a week or a month and so on. So I would walk out and I think, oh my, that person's going to be thinking day and night about my product and it's going to turn into a sale. No, people forget that you ever lived as soon as you walk out of their sight. They don't think about your product and think about your service. They forget you ever lived. So therefore, if you cannot ask for the order, stage 6, then you're dead in the water, dead in the water. And then finally, step number 7 is you take such good care of your customer after they buy that they buy again and bring their friends. So it's buy again, and bring your friends. So those are the 7. And I've taught those 7. I'm astonished how many salespeople do not know the 7. Now, here's the other thing. The 7 are very much like a phone number, is you have to dial them in the proper sequence. You can't go from here to here and back to here. No, you have to do it in order, in sequence, as the customer relaxes and smiles and nods and gets along. Once I learned that, I increased my sales 10 times. And a few years later, I was a millionaire. And I've spoken to hundreds, thousands of my friends in selling, professional sales, who became millionaires. And they live in big homes and they drive beautiful cars and they go on vacation to luxury resorts. Why? They learn how to make sales. So that's the most important thing of all. So people say, well, I don't like to sell. I don't like to sell. Well, you know what? I'm going to whack, whack, whack. Stop that. You learn how to sell. If you want to be rich, you have to sell something. Or, now there's one exception. If you have a partnership with someone else who's very good at selling, and you are very good at organizing and raising money and everything else, then the two of you could form a partnership. One of the most famous partnerships is Hewlett Packard. Hewlett Packard, the big high-tech company, is Hewlett was the technical genius, and David Packard was the sales and marketing genius. And they formed this after World War II. They had both been in the Marines in the Pacific. They came together. They formed it in a little garage in Palo Alto, California. Still, it's famous. People go there and they drive fast. So they look at that's where one of the biggest companies in the world was started, in that little garage. And one was the marketer, one was the developer of the product. So if you are not really good at selling, and by the way, you have to like selling. You can't say, well, I'm going to become good at selling. No, for me, I love to communicate and sell. If you don't love to sell, you'll never be good at it. Then you must find someone else who is good. And that's what many companies do. They find somebody else who's really good. So those are my thoughts on how to be successful, how to become rich, is to sell more and more of your product, make more and more of your profits, and then finally, hold on to the money. Hold on to the money.
Great. And do you think that one of the most important things in being successful, in getting there, is to get more knowledge, to get more skills? Like maybe sometimes someone doesn't lack self-discipline, but maybe he just needs more knowledge, know how to do something. Yeah, and I'm asking you because you've mentioned before that you're buying between 2 or 3 books per week, which sounds crazy, but I guess you buy them to read them. So it seems that you read a lot. So I guess you live by it, yeah?
Well, I did a study, of course, I said earlier, about self-made millionaires. And excuse me. First of all, I began to teach other people how to become self-made millionaires. And there's a rule: you become what you teach. You become what you teach. So I began to teach people to become millionaires, and I became a millionaire. I just looked around, and there's the bank account. Couldn't believe it, and more. I'm happy to say. So that's the starting point. Is when you begin to read and learn, it takes discipline. At the beginning, it takes discipline, but then you start to learn really interesting things that help you to get better results faster. And then you become hungry for knowledge. So anyway, I studied self-made millionaires. I wrote books on self-made millionaires. I taught thousands, tens of thousands of people to become self-made millionaires. And then I started to look at billionaires. When I started off, there were about 5 billionaires in the world. Today, there's 2,600 billionaires. So I began to study the research on billionaires. Here's what billionaires do that average people don't. Number one, they get up by 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes earlier, 5 o'clock. But they get up by 6 o'clock in the morning and they start moving immediately. They don't lay around and drink coffee and watch television. No, television is the great destroyer of life. It destroys you. Why? Because most people who are poor get up in the morning. The first thing they do is turn on the television, and then they drink coffee, and they read the newspaper and watch TV until it's time to go to work. And so they go to work at the last minute. I know I've had these people working for me because half of the time they're late. Why? Because they just didn't want to start too early, just in case there was no traffic. I had a man tell me, I come in late because I'm afraid that if I leave early, there won't be any traffic, and I'll get to the office early. And then what would I do? Well, you know what happened to him. But so the first thing is they get up in the morning by 6, then they exercise. And we're not talking about running a marathon. They may go for a run, they may go for a swim, they may get on a treadmill, they may do some yoga, but they get the body moving, get the blood flowing, and then they read for an hour. And I have taught this all my life. I've found rich people read at least an hour a day in their field. Bill Gates reads one business book a week, and then he underlines it, and then he writes down all the notes, and then he puts it on his website. If you want to know his ideas, what he underlined, just go to billgates.com, and there's each book that he read and what he learned from those books. One of the richest men in the world will tell you what he's reading and how it helped him. Good grief. And you know something? Not 1 in 1,000 people will take advantage of this. It's in every newspaper, it's in every magazine. If you want to know what Bill Gates is reading and what's important to him, it's there. It's free. Jeez. Anyway, so you find that wealthy people get up by 6, before 6. They exercise to get going. They read at least an hour, and then they plan every day in advance, usually the night before, but they plan every day in advance, and they start to work like a runner in a race. They hit it and they go to work, and they work all day long. Now, this is one of the great expressions, and you teach this as well. It's real simple. It's work all the time you work. Work all the time you work. Don't drink coffee and talk to your friends and read the newspaper. When you get into work, you hit it almost like a racer. Blam, wham, you start working, and you work all day. People come up to you and they say, "Hi, how are you doing? What are you doing today?" You say, "Look, I've got to get some things finished, so I can't talk to you now. Why don't you go and talk to that person who has no future, and let me finish my work?" So always tell them, always put them off. Have you got a minute? No, not right now. I've got to get this job done. People will always leave you alone if you tell them that you have to finish a job. They'll always leave you alone. Pretty soon, they just never come and talk to you anymore. Pretty soon, you'll be there working all by yourself, and they're all sitting around, talk. I remember when I first read this study, I was speaking for a large company. I went in, and there were 10 people in the office. Only one was working. 9 of them were talking to each other. talk, 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 talk. Nobody was working. You think,
Mhm.
how do these companies stay alive? So therefore, work all the time you work and keep hitting it right up to the end of the day. Work till 6:30 or 7. Because if you do that, you just beat the traffic home. There's no, if you leave and get to work before the traffic and then you leave after the traffic, you don't lose any time at all, but you will get another 3 hours of highly productive, uninterrupted time each day. So this is what rich people do. Rich people are very fastidious about their time, and they're constantly learning. They're constantly taking in new information.
Great. That's a great insight, and I could definitely ask you thousands of questions, but I respect your time. So I've got only one last question, which is a classic of this show. Could you name one thing or service which costed maximum $100, but despite of the price, which was not high, it made some significant difference in your life?
Well, let me turn that question around, because you're in Poland and I'm in San Diego. What would your answer be to that? What would your answer be for me if I asked you that?
Well, I guess definitely some kind of book.
Yes. Well, my favorite book, it's my own book. It's called Maximum Achievement. And it's the most popular success book in the world today in 54 languages. And it's available everywhere. It's at all the book stands. In Russia, this is one of the first books that was spread all over Russia when the Iron Curtain fell. And in every bookstore in Russia, from St. Petersburg to Vladivostok, you walk into a bookstore and there's a shelf of Brian Tracy books right in the front door. And the number one book is always Maximum Achievement. I've had people, countless people, became millionaires, multimillionaires, and 3 people called me and told me they went from nothing to billionaire status. One of them is one of the richest men in the world. His name is Dimitri. He's worth $6.7 billion. And he told me that when he started, he had nothing, but then he read Maximum Achievement. And today he's one of the richest people in the world. Wonderful story. Wonderful man, too. Good man. And so just like you said, the concept is very important to read, and read the very best success books that are there. And the best, I think, that I've ever done is actually 2 books. One is Maximum Achievement, and the other one is called No Excuses. No Excuses is the power of self-discipline. Because those 2, right hand and left hand, Maximum Achievement, the psychology of success, and No Excuses, the power of self-discipline. Those 2, from my experience, will make you rich. They'll also make you happy. They're very, very happy books. Oh, by the way, one key idea is when you read a book of any kind, if it doesn't grab you quickly, if it doesn't say, "Ooh, I like this," you want to read it. You could carry it around. If it doesn't grab you quickly, throw it away. Because if it doesn't hold on to you and hold your attention, you will never remember a word that you read. And even worse, it'll keep you away from reading something better. So therefore, read the introduction and the first chapter. If it doesn't grab you and make you want to continue reading, then throw it away. Even if it's my book, even if throw it away, because if it grabs you, you can think of books that you've read that had a great influence on you. Is you just read them and you just enjoyed every page, and you enjoy rereading them. I read some books 3, 4, 5 times over the years, and every single time it's just such a joy.
Great. Thanks a lot. I'm very grateful that you shared all this knowledge with us. We hope that you're gonna achieve further successes, and I'm pretty sure that our audience is also enriched right now by those insights. So I thank you, and I wish you all the best, as well as our audience. So thanks a lot.
One last thing, please, if you want to learn more and more about this at no charge, come to my website, briantracy.com, and within a couple of weeks, we will have Ask Brian Tracy available to you, and you'll be able to go there at any time for the rest of your life and ask any business or personal question. And with AI and Chat GPT, you'll be able to get the answer so fast, so much faster than going to bookstores or anything else. So by all means, if you're interested in these ideas, go to briantracy.com and sign up, and then we will keep you informed. And I would love to come back and talk to you again.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, and all the best from Poland.
Thank you.